So I'm going to walk you through how to sample for environmental DNA or eDNA using water samples. And I have two different techniques that we're going to work through. So the first one is to take a water sample using basically any bottle that you can find that has a lid. You want to make sure that these are super clean. We usually wash things with 50% bleach, and then I also do a dishwasher in addition to that. So it needs to have no residue from your target species in it. And then this is one of the systems that I've created. These are two bamboo poles, but you can figure out whatever. I went to a garden store and I taped this together. Okay, so I got the water bottle in here. It's very sturdy. And the reason we have this length is because an important component about sampling for eDNA is that the investigator or the individual should not get in the water. And you want to get usually as far out into the water body as you can get. So this is my attempt, is getting far out as I can get. So I'm going to take off the lid and be very careful not to touch anything on the inside of these, because that's the sample and that's what can get contaminated. And contamination is a really big concern with this kind of thing. So I'm going to make sure that I don't touch, the outside is okay, but nothing on the inside. Gonna get as close as I can to the water body. And I'm also gonna avoid sampling water that has a lot of maybe sediment, or that's been stirred up, or that has a lot of duckweed or something on top, because that will clog the filter. Right here it looks pretty clear, so this looks like a great place to sample. So I'm gonna get as far as I can without touching the water. You wanna fill this up. We want to get at least a liter of water. So that's the goal, a liter of water. So we wanna fill it up pretty much all the way. Then I'm gonna cap it off. Very careful not to touch the inside. And we've got one sample. So this is one way to do the sampling. It's especially going to be easier if you have a lot of samples to do in a short period of time. You know, just set this up, grab your sample, and then take it back, and then you can do the filtering at some other part during that day. I would definitely make sure to do the filtering within a couple of hours. And if you need to, if you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can filter the water, then I would put the bottle in ice and keep it as cold as possible, because DNA can denature when there is moisture in water, but also when there's heat. So if you keep it cool on ice, you have a little more time before that target DNA denatures. So we got one water sample. What we have here is a tube, and it has a filter connection on it that's going to connect to the filter. This is the filter that is going to filter the water. And this is another place where we really want to be sure that we don't have contamination. So when you're handling this, always handle the outside and do not ever touch the inside of this filter. Okay, so to set this up, I have some cable ties here and another garden stick. And this time the filter is going to hang off. Okay, so now we're going to set this up with the filter and with the pump, so that we're going to actually be pumping it as we collect the water. Okay, so this is a pump, and it is a peristaltic pump. And what that means is, I'll show you in a second. So for this system, we have a battery, a lithium-ion battery. They usually take a longer amount of power. We have a lithium-ion battery. You could also use a car battery. And then we have our peristaltic pump. And the way this works is we're gonna put the tubing through this pump, and then it's gonna squeeze the outside of the tubing, and that squeezing motion creates a vacuum inside the tube and pulls water through it. So this pump actually never comes into contact with the water, and so we don't have to worry about contamination. So in the scenario where you're actually pumping, you're gonna need the filter, and you're also gonna need some kind of container for your wastewater. This container, it really helps if it is marked, so you can measure how much water is coming through the filter, because that's gonna be important information for the analysis. But it can be any container, and you don't have to worry about this getting contaminated because it's gonna be the wastewater. So the most important part is the filter, the white filter in this container. That's where the water is gonna be passing through, and it's gonna be capturing the DNA. So you don't wanna touch anything in front of that filter, but once it's filtered through, the water is all wastewater, so you don't have to worry about touching that. So I'm opening it from the side where the bottom is, because this is the side where we are least likely to contaminate it from. I'm just opening it enough so that I can access the connection point. And I'm gonna take this filter on the tubing and connect it, or this funnel, and connect it to the tubing. And then now I have an open filter system. And again, the filter is the white thing in there. You might want to come and look over here on this. Okay, so we're gonna put the tubing, this opens and closes, right? So we're opening it up, we put the tubing in the slot. We close it down. Then we need to think about the direction of flow. We want the flow to come in this way and through that way. So this is actually going to be a reverse flow. It has an arrow on this showing the direction of flow. So we want the flow to go in the filter and come out the tubing. So it's gonna be in that direction. And then it is often best to capture the water at the surface rather than at the bottom of your water system, because the bottom of the water system is gonna have more sediment in it and will clog the filter more quickly. So we set it up so that that top is submerged in the water, and then it's going through the pump head, and then it's going to exit into the waste container. And we wanna measure that outflow to figure out how much goes through. All right? So you want to pull the water through until you have at least, generally I like to say around 500 milliliters. Now that will be easier or harder depending on how much sediment there is in the water. If there's a lot of sediment in the water, it will take a long time. That filter will clog quickly. It will take a long time for that water to go through. You might only get something like 200 or 250 milliliters from one filter. In that case, you could take that one filter and then go grab another filter and continue to filter the water until it gets to about 500 milliliters. Now this is wastewater, so it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna take note that we have 500 right now I only have that many, but I'll take note of how many milliliters that I have captured because that's useful information for the lab analysis. So I'm going to take the filter out of our setup right now, and because this is the most important part, I'm gonna use gloves to make sure that I don't contaminate that filter. And there will be some residual liquid in here, so I want to make sure that I capture it all so that I can help measure how much water went through. So make sure you get all that residual liquid. And if you look at this, you can see that the filter is now slightly brown because our water is slightly brown. There's sediment in there, but there's also leaf tannins and whatnot. But this is a filter that has done its filtering. Take the filter out. I'm gonna undo the funnel. And I have a clean set of tweezers. It helps to have wide ones. And you just squeeze the outside a little bit and turn it. And that top comes off. This is trash. And here we have the filter. And the filter sits on top of the cellulose or whatever that filter structure is. The filter paper sits on top of that. So we only want this top paper. That's where all the DNA is trapped right now. And we are going to put it into a container that has essentially silica in it. So let's take a look at what's in here. This is just a brown paper coin envelope. And in here, it's a packet of silica. This will help dehydrate the sample so that those enzymes that break down the DNA do not work. And so I've just bought a lot of these, and I put this in an envelope here because that will protect the actual silica from contamination, and then I can reuse that silica. So I have that in here, and this is paper because it will help dehydrate it. And then I'm gonna take just this top filter and I'm going to carefully place it into the bag. I like to have the sample face out, and then I'm gonna seal the bag. And then this part is now trash as well. And then on the bag, this is where I'm gonna label all the samples. Important labeling information: the place, the date, and how much water in milliliters was pulled through the filter. Okay, so this sample is done. It has generic information on it for today, but you would have detailed information. At this point, you should take those gloves off because these are contaminated with that sample, and these are trash. Then we have to clean the tweezers. And I have a Falcon tube or whatever container. It has 50% bleach and 50% water. Gonna submerge it for a minute, then wipe it off and reuse it. Whenever you do a sample, you always need to have a negative control. So I usually just go to the grocery store and buy distilled water, filtered water, and then I run this through the filter, and it's a very short amount of time. And this is a check to make sure that all of the processes have remained uncontaminated. So you need at least one negative control for every field day. And then finally, if you were using your bottled water to run the sample, you would set up the system the same way. And then put the filter in your sampling bag. So that's it. 2 different ways to sample based on whatever is easiest. It's really important, again, that when you use a bottle for sampling, you thoroughly clean it with at least 50% bleach, rinse it, and then even dishwasher it after that for good added measure.